Elvis Presley didn't just perform. He made a room feel his presence before he said a single word. Coolio took the specific language of a neighborhood and turned it into something the whole world could hear. Shelley Duvall understood that vulnerability, held without flinching, is its own kind of power. Amy Winehouse had a voice so precise and so lived in that it felt less like singing and more like testimony. Every note carried a cost. Jeff Beck spent a lifetime proving that mastery is not a destination. It's a discipline you recommit to every single day. Marilyn Monroe turned the act of being watched into an art form. She was the most studied performer of her generation, and still the least understood. There is a moment in Pulp Fiction, you know the one, where Samuel L. Jackson leans forward, the light cutting across his face, and delivers a passage from Ezekiel with such absolute conviction that the air in the theater changes. It is not shouting. It is not performance in the theatrical sense. It is belief, surgical and total, channeled through a man who had spent decades learning exactly how much pressure a line of dialogue could hold before it broke, and exactly how much further he could push it without letting it snap. That scene did not happen because of luck. It happened because of years, because of choices, because of a man who understood that craft is not a gift, it is a practice. Samuel Leroy Jackson was born on December 21st, 1948, in Washington, D.C., and raised largely in Chattanooga, Tennessee, by his maternal grandparents and mother. The South shaped him, its rhythms, its cadences, its particular textures of language. He grew up in a world where storytelling was not entertainment. It was survival and community. He was listening before he knew he was studying. He enrolled at Morehouse College in Atlanta in the late 1960s, initially studying marine biology, a detail that says something about a man who has never been afraid to commit fully to a direction, even one he would later abandon. He switched to drama. He got involved in activism. In 1969, he and a group of students held members of the Morehouse Board of Trustees hostage, including Martin Luther King Sr., as a protest over campus governance. He was suspended. That kind of boldness, the willingness to occupy a room on his own terms and refuse to leave quietly, would follow him for the rest of his life. He found his footing in theater. In Atlanta, he worked with the Negro Ensemble Company and began building the foundational vocabulary of his craft, the patience to inhabit a character rather than merely indicate one. He moved to New York and kept working. He studied. He watched. He took roles where the pay was negligible and the audience was sparse, because the work was real. He met Spike Lee, who cast him in supporting roles in She's Gotta Have It and Do the Right Thing. Those were not star-making turns. They were apprentice work at the highest available level, a young actor learning how the camera processes stillness, how less can register more, how presence is built from restraint as much as from expression. And then came the years that could have ended the story entirely. Jackson's struggle with substance abuse is part of the public record, and he has discussed it candidly. By the late 1980s, addiction had tightened its grip. He checked into a rehabilitation facility in 1991. His wife, LaTanya Richardson, herself an accomplished actress, whom he had met at Morehouse, gave him a clear-eyed ultimatum: get clean or lose everything. He got clean. What happened next is one of the more remarkable professional rebirths in American film history, and it happened almost immediately. Spike Lee cast him in Jungle Fever in 1991 as Gator, a crack-addicted brother whose deterioration was not played for pathos or redemption arc. It was played with unflinching, uncomfortable truth. Jackson won the inaugural Best Supporting Male Award from the Independent Spirit Awards. The Cannes Film Festival, which had no supporting category at the time, created a special jury prize specifically to acknowledge his performance. Critics who had been watching the margins of American film suddenly had a name they needed to remember. Then came Patriot Games, Juice, Menace to Society, White Sands, a man building momentum with the focused accumulation of someone who knows that the window is not permanently open, that the work has to speak now, and then again tomorrow, and then again the day after that. And then John Travolta and a briefcase full of nothing. Quentin Tarantino had seen something in Jackson during a reading for Reservoir Dogs. Jackson did not get that part, but Tarantino filed the encounter away. When Pulp Fiction went into production in 1994, Jules Winfield needed someone who could make words into architecture, who could fill a scene with moral weight while holding a gun, who could make a monologue feel like a verdict. Jackson got the role. He made it permanent. Jules Winfield is not a good man, but in Jackson's hands, he is a man in the process of deciding whether to become one. That internal negotiation, played through body language, through the deliberate pacing of speech, through eyes that are always calculating, is what elevates the performance from memorable to canonical. He was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. He did not win. The industry's failure to award him that night is one of those historical footnotes that time has corrected in the court of public opinion. Pulp Fiction changed the scale of what was possible for Jackson. Not because it made him famous, he was already known, but because it demonstrated what happened when he was given material that matched his capacity. The answer was something that lasts. What followed was one of the most prolific periods any American actor has sustained. He appeared in Die Hard with a Vengeance with Bruce Willis. He played an unjustly accused man in A Time to Kill, a role that required him to deliver a closing courtroom speech that remains one of the more technically demanding pieces of persuasion in mainstream American cinema. He was Nick Fury in a post-credits scene that most of the audience did not fully understand at the time. A cameo that would eventually anchor one of the most successful entertainment franchises in history. He worked with every major director of the last 3 decades: Spielberg, Tarantino again, in Jackie Brown and Django Unchained, and The Hateful Eight, John Singleton, M. Night Shyamalan, Rob Reiner, Joe Roth, Stuart Baird. He was not precious about genre. He did action and drama and comedy and horror and science fiction, because he understood something that more status-conscious actors miss. Range is not built by choosing carefully. It is built by working constantly and bringing the same rigor to every assignment. His collaboration with Tarantino deserves its own examination, because it reveals something about how Jackson thinks about craft. In Jackie Brown, he plays Ordell Robbie, a weapons dealer who is charming, funny, and quietly terrifying. The performance has almost no seams. There is no visible technique. Jackson has spoken about how he prepares, reading the script until the character's logic feels inevitable. Finding the specific music the character hears, the specific way the character moves through the world. Not external decoration, internal architecture. In Django Unchained, he played Stephen, the house slave whose collaboration with plantation power made him one of the more morally complex characters in Tarantino's work. It was a role that invited misreading, a role that required the audience to sit with discomfort rather than be released from it. Jackson did not soften the edges. He understood that the most important thing a performance can do is refuse to be comfortable when comfort would be dishonest. The Marvel Cinematic Universe gave Jackson something different: continuity. Nick Fury is not a showcase role in the way Jules Winfield is. It is a different kind of craft, maintaining a coherent human being across a decade of films, made by different directors with different tones. Jackson has appeared in more MCU films than almost any other cast member. The discipline required to stay consistent across that many productions, that many years, is its own form of technical mastery. He received the Academy Honorary Award, the AFI Lifetime Achievement Award, and BAFTA recognition that acknowledged a body of work rather than a single performance. And rightly so, because Jackson's career does not reduce to one film or one role. The whole is larger than any of its parts. His filmography, by the mid-2020s, stands at well over 150 productions. No serious actor in Hollywood has maintained that level of output without sacrificing quality across the board. Some of those films are blockbusters. Some are smaller pictures that deserved more attention. Some exist somewhere in between. But even in the films that do not fully succeed, Jackson's performances tend to be the most reliable thing on screen. A professional holding the frame while everything around him finds its footing. He received an honorary doctorate from Morehouse College, returning to the institution that had shaped and then expelled him. A full circle that carries more weight than most honorary degrees. He has been publicly vocal on political and social issues throughout his career, which has occasionally drawn criticism and equally drawn admiration, because he has never calibrated his public speech for safety. The same man who locked down a boardroom at 20 years old is still in the building. His wife, LaTanya Richardson Jackson, is a consistent presence in his life and career. They have been married since 1980, raising their daughter Zoe, and their partnership is one of the longer-running and less dramatized love stories in the entertainment industry. In 2022, Jackson received the Screen Actors Guild Lifetime Achievement Award, which the Guild gives not to careers that are ending, but to careers that have fundamentally altered what the profession looks like. Jackson's acceptance was characteristically direct and without false modesty. He had earned that. What makes Samuel L. Jackson's career worth studying is not the volume, though the volume is staggering. It is the standard. Across more than 5 decades, in every genre, at every budget level, opposite every major star of his era, Jackson has arrived prepared, has done the work, and has consistently given the material more than it asked for. That is not charisma. Charisma is accidental. That is discipline, repeated until it looks effortless. The Ezekiel speech in Pulp Fiction, the closing argument in A Time to Kill, the calm menace of Ordell Robbie, the moral maze of Stephen in Django, the decade-long coherence of Nick Fury. These are not accidents of casting or chemistry. They are the product of a man who decided, after his second chance in 1991, that there would be no wasted reps. he is still working. New projects, new collaborators, new challenges. The appetite has not narrowed. The preparation has not softened. And the screen still changes when he walks into it.